Born Savage, Blood Rose Nights, Book 2. Written by Keary Taylor. Narrated by Raven Wildwood. Chapter 1. I just want to remind you that I saved your life a few weeks ago. The words fall out over my lips before my brain can really think them through. So, I think you kind of owe me or something. So if you're thinking about turning me in, just remember that little detail. The look on Roman's face is cold blankness. And then he gives this huff and shakes his head, looking away from me. He lets out a curse.
Is that what you think of me, Juliet? That I'd use you because I'm the only one who knows what the hell just happened?
His eyes slide back over to meet mine, and a cold chill works its way down my spine. Yes, that's exactly what I think. It's what any man who had something against me in my past would do. If you get dirt on someone, you exploit it. But there's something in Roman's eyes that looks a little hurt, maybe. I have no idea what to think of that. I don't know, I answer hoarsely as I look away from him. Pretty sure you wouldn't mind seeing me disappear, so maybe. Roman curses again and shakes his head. A dark smile pulls on his face, but it's the offended and defensive kind of smile.
You're a piece of work, you know that?
Oh, I know, I say, but the words don't have as much sarcastic oomph as I'd like. My words come out a little too quiet, a little too constrained. Roman's eyes slide back over to me.
The reason I didn't want you coming into Chicago is now lying dead in a dumpster. I never had anything against you personally.
Could have fooled me, I say, fixing him with a cold stare because his words feel like a damn lie. His eyes narrow.
Fine. I might have judged you for cozying up with Mason Godfrey in that golden tower. The man's made of money, so it's hard not to wonder what your motivations are. Except, the man's a damn saint, so I guess I don't know what the hell to think.
Yeah, well, that's over now, I say, as my eyes fall to my lap. My shirt is there, shredded, but I don't really see it. And I can tell you, it never once had anything to do with his money. I kind of hated that part, if I'm being honest. A long moment of silence stretches on between us. My head's a mess right now. My heart is an even bigger one. Everything is going to be different now. And now I've got a new, fun little complication in my life. How much do you trust Malcolm? I ask, looking back at Roman.
Why?
He asks, as those impossibly blue eyes slide over to meet mine. Because I think he's the one who could give me some answers about what just happened, but it will mean having to clue him in, I answer. Sigrid, too.
Sigrid thinks you're the best thing that ever walked into this city,
Roman says, barely suppressing an eye roll. She's not the one I asked about, I point out, with a raised eyebrow. Sigrid is family, maybe distantly, but still. And she's worked her way into a deep, permanent place in my heart. I trust her with my life, which this is.
Malcolm is about as good as they get,
Roman says, as he looks out into the dark night.
He holds more secrets than probably anyone in this city. If you think about what he does, he knows the secrets of everyone's ancestors. His title is the historian.
I nod, remembering Mason calling him that. Any chance you have his number? I need to go see him.
He says pointedly. I watched you resurrect a second time, Juliet. As far as I know, that's never happened in the few thousand years of vampire history. I'm getting some damn answers, too.
Alarm bells are going off in my brain left and right. More dirt. This will give him more dirt on me. But as I look into Roman DeLuca's eyes, I know he's going to get what he wants. So somehow, I need to get more dirt on him. Something I can use against him if he tries to use this against me. Because I might have saved his life, but not everyone owns up to their debts. Call Malcolm. Tell him we need to meet him. Now. Roman just nods once, and I climb from the trunk to the passenger seat of the SUV as he pulls his phone out. I reach into my pocket, but curse when I remember. I was on the phone, with Roman, when Pablo attacked me. It shattered on the sidewalk.
I need to talk to you,
Roman says, the moment I hear Malcolm answer with a tired voice on the other end.
It's urgent.
Fine, where? Malcolm responds.
We need Sigrid, too.
Roman says as he looks over at me. When his eyes flick outside, I think he must remember seeing my shattered phone too.
I'm at her place.
Malcolm answers.
We'll be there in 10 minutes.
Roman quips before hanging up. He slips his phone back into his pocket and pulls the vehicle into drive. Silently, we drive through the night, and my mind is racing. I don't really understand what happened. Elena explained that vampires are immortal, as in, they never die. But she added a very clear stipulation, unless they're staked through the heart or beheaded. I was staked. I remember that part very clearly. I remember it piercing into that soft tissue. I remember it sinking all the way through till it hit my ribs behind it. I remember dying. The terrifying but peaceful feeling. The darkness, the nothingness. Yet here I am. I'm breathing. I feel my heart beating in my chest like it wasn't just punctured half an hour ago. Something niggles at the back of my brain. Something that I saw before. Something I did not understand the significance of at the moment. I push it away and look out at the dark streets of Chicago. We make our way out of the downtown area and into Old Town. The buildings grow smaller and much, much older. Brick and stone, the houses are lined up either with touching walls or with only a few feet between them. The character and charm is beautiful. And then we roll down a street of red brick townhouses, all with black trim and gas lanterns beside the front doors. Roman parks in front of Sigrid's house, and as we look up to it, I see a few lights on inside. I take one deep breath, trying to mentally prepare myself for this. My life has changed so much since I came to this city 2 months ago. Just 3 months ago, I was a medical resident in New York City, drowning in student debt, but finally getting the respect that I'd never had an ounce of my entire life. But look where I am now, filled with a million questions. My future is thrown to the wind, and I have absolutely no idea where I'm going to land. I push the door open and step outside. Roman and I walk up the stairs, side by side. I knock on the door, and just 4 seconds later, it opens, and there we find Sigrid and Malcolm. "Juliet?" she asks, in her Norwegian accent. Her eyes slide down to my chest, my stomach, and then widen just a bit before she looks over at Roman, and then they narrow. I look down at myself. I had forgotten that I was wearing nothing but a deep purple bra. I'd clawed my shirt off, trying to find the evidence of my staking. I hadn't even thought about the fact that I was hanging out with Roman, totally shirtless. "It's nothing," I say to her, shaking my head. "There was a little accident, and my shirt was the victim. I swear, Sigrid, Roman had nothing to do with it." Why am I defending him? "Come inside," she says, pulling me in, looking up and down the street as if she's worried about danger. As a leader on the night council, she probably always has something to worry about. Roman steps in behind us, and Malcolm closes the door. I love Sigrid's home. With its dark green walls, black accents, and warm wooden original features, it's cozy, and the perfect space for a witch who would never call herself a witch. And her dozens of plants kind of make it feel like she's created her own little jungle in the middle of this brick and concrete maze. "Juliet, what has happened?" Sigrid asks as she steps forward, hugging her robe tighter around her body. Something is different." I meet her eyes for just a moment before I look back at Malcolm. "Did you notice it? Did you know what it was when you looked at my history?" Malcolm's eyes slide over to Roman, and warily, he looks back at me. When he peered back into my history before, he'd sensed there was something off, and he'd asked Mason to step outside so I could keep the details to myself. "It's fine," I say with an annoyed sigh. Roman already knows. The whole damn thing happened in front of him. "What thing?" Sigrid asks as she steps forward and takes my hand in hers. She looks frantic, scared. "Juliet, something has happened. I could feel it the moment you stepped inside, and I can feel it now. Something is different." Warily, I look over at Roman, and he just holds my gaze and gives a nod. "I need you to show me my history again," I say to Malcolm. "Just a few specific parts, please." My tone is desperate. Neither he nor Sigrid knows what to think, but with trust, he nods and extends a hand to the sitting room. Is there any way Sigrid can see this? I ask, as I sit in one of the overstuffed chairs. Malcolm sits on an ottoman, pulling it up in front of me. Because I need her to help make sense of this.
Juliet, are you sure?
Malcolm asks.
What we saw, this is your story. This is your life.
I shake my head. My life isn't making any damn sense, even for being a vampire. Sigrid, I need your help. I need you to explain. I will do my best, dear Juliet, she says with a nod as she steps forward, and with one smooth movement, Malcolm pulls his shirt over his head, revealing a very impressive physique.
I unlock your history by touching you,
Malcolm explains.
But it is possible to channel it to others by them touching me.
I nod. I should wonder about all this insane gift stuff, how it all works, where it comes from, but I've got bigger problems right now. My eyes rise up to Roman, and my insides get even more complicated. You better watch this too, since you just witnessed it. Crap, things are messy right now. Roman is my biggest enemy in this city. He's already witnessed my biggest secret, and now I'm inviting him to watch the origin of it. But Roman simply nods, and both he and Sigrid step up behind Malcolm. And with one deep, calming breath, I take his hands, and my eyes automatically snap closed. You said my mother was a curse weaver, I say, as I feel that familiar sensation of Malcolm sifting through the sand of my mind, my past. At that admission, I hear Roman suck in a surprised breath. Shit, he didn't know that part. Crap. I'm just putting myself deeper under his thumb. But I shake my head, moving on. She cursed my father so he couldn't find her after she found out Archer King was after her. Roman swears, and more details are filled in. But I need you to show me what happened after my birth, I say, as my insides tremble. The night she was killed. I need you to show it to me again. I didn't understand it then, but things I saw, things Sigrid has said to me, they are starting to fall into place.
All right,
Malcolm says calmly, and I feel myself being pulled back through time, through my entire life, and suddenly, it all stops in a dark house. And there, alone in an upstairs bedroom, I see my mother scream in pain and fear. And then, a bloody blonde-haired baby enters this world, screaming loud and fierce. I have to hold back the tears. I cannot focus on that woman, my mother. But it's nearly impossible. She was taken from me. She was a good person. So good. She wanted me. My father wanted me. They loved me before I was even born. And Archer King took her from me. And I lived a life of fear and pain. But right now, I have to push that all away. I concentrate on Ingrid, handling me with such care, even though her body is ravaged and bleeding and exhausted. She cuts the cord and wraps me in a blanket. She smiles and laughs and cries as she cradles me to her chest and presses a kiss to my forehead. Your mother loved you very much, Sigrid says. I can't see her right now, but I feel her presence, so comforting and caring. I can only nod, fighting tears. Can you cut through the day? I ask Malcolm, through a thick throat, to right before she ran through the cornfield. And, just like a movie, the night speeds up. Ingrid dresses me, she gets in a car, and she drives. But just a few minutes later, she realizes someone is following her. She's out in the country when the car runs out of gas. Shit, Roman breathes out when he realizes what it means. Ingrid jumps out of the car, frantically collecting me from the car seat. I'm screaming so loud, and from behind, that other car flies up, screeching to a stop, just as Ingrid sprints into the cornfield, her expression utterly terrified. We can't hear anything. There are no words. But we all see it as Ingrid's lips begin moving, speaking rapidly. Sigrid, I say, the words breathing over my lips in a quiver. What does it look like she's doing to you? I feel her, and her presence grows heavier, as if she's taking a closer look. She is weaving a curse, she says, her tone chilled. I nod, because I realize it now. Sigrid once told me I was cursed. I didn't know what it meant at the time. But as I watch my mother frantically sprint through the cornfield, things are starting to slide into place. Archer gets closer. The distance between him and my mother grows smaller and smaller. Tears are streaked all down my mother's face, and still running, my mother hugs me tighter to her, raising my forehead to her lips, and she presses a soft kiss to it. And with a deep breath and the squeeze of her eyes, she suddenly jerks me as she steps out of the field, out onto the side of the highway.
Holy shit.
Roman breathes. At the same time, my entire body goes cold.
What?
Malcolm asks, and I feel him searching harder into the moment, digging deeper for what he missed. She just snapped my neck, I say, my tone very flat and even. Juliet's mother just killed her baby, Sigrid says. I hear the quake in her tone, the shake, the horror, the awe. I lay in her arms, limp, quiet. It looks like the baby is sleeping, finally calm. But in truth, the newborn in her arms is dead, killed at the hand of her own mother. And then there is Archer. I hardly register it as he snatches my mother by the neck. Tears are cascading down her face. And the look on his face, it's so triumphant, evil, satisfied. He takes her gift. He takes her ability to weave curses, and in doing so, he takes her life. He removes his hand, and she collapses to the ground, dead. She drops me, and like a limp doll, I lay on my back, eyes closed, limbs loose. Archer looks down at the two of us, a satisfied smile that slowly transforms into disgust. He looks up, looking up and down the road, looking for witnesses. And then he turns back into the cornfield and walks back to his car. Rain starts falling from the sky, and motionless, my mother and I lie there on the ground. My heart is beating so hard in my chest. Great thumps, it thunders in my ribcage, telling me that I am very much alive. But I watch myself, as a baby, lying dead on the ground.
Keep track of the time,
I hear Roman say, and something beeps.
It's been about a minute.
I nod, but I have no idea if he sees it.
Juliet,
Malcolm asks, his voice shaky. Just wait, I whisper. And we wait. We watch. The rain picks up a bit, splashing over our faces, soaking our clothes. Tick, tick, tick. I feel the time moving by. It feels like an eternity. But then, what can only be about 20 minutes later, the babe lying in the dirt gives a quick squirm. She kicks a foot, and she lets out a scream.
Holy shit, Juliet.
Roman breathes.
You've died 3 times now.
I rip my hand out of Malcolm's because I know what happened next. I laid there in the rain for a while before someone finally came along that empty road in Kansas and found me next to my dead mother. Wait a second, I say, as I pull back from Malcolm. If I died then, why didn't I resurrect as a vampire? My eyes slide over to Roman, and with wide eyes, he simply shakes his head.
I don't understand. That's how it works. If you have a vampire father, you die as a human and resurrect as a vampire. You should have come back as a vampire, as a damn newborn.
Wait, what? Malcolm asks, confusion wrinkling his expression.
How? That night?
He reaches up and rubs his temples.
Your own mother killed you that night?
3 times, Juliet, Sigrid questions. My eyes finally meet hers, and she's so pale, her expression is nearly frantic. You... She shakes her head, blinking 5 times at me. Juliet, you died again tonight?
She was staked by Pablo,
Roman says, dark but calm.
Right before I ripped him apart.
What? Malcolm demands, his voice filled with shock and horror. You were supposed to stay in Godfrey Tower, Sigrid says, her tone sounding more and more like a mother by the second. Juliet, that was reckless and...
It doesn't matter how it happened.
Roman cuts her off. The dark look in his eyes snags something in my chest, and, for the first time ever, I look up at him with appreciation.
What matters is getting answers about why Juliet has died 3 times now and has come back from the dead all 3 of those times.
Sigrid's expression goes blank for a moment as she gathers herself once more. She takes one deep breath in through her nose and slowly lets it out between her lips. Your mother was a curse weaver. They're rare, incredibly so. I have only ever heard of them. I have yet to actually meet one. From what we just saw, from the evidence in front of our eyes, Juliet, I believe that your mother cursed you with the inability to die. And there it is. The words chill up and down my spine, crawling over my skin like the legs of 1,000 spiders. She knew your father was a vampire. She knew how the resurrection process works. She must have worked that into the curse, that you would not complete the transformation until you reached a more appropriate age. Malcolm curses, and his hands rise to lace into his hair.
You're telling me you're a vampire who can't be killed? You really got staked tonight? I watched the entire thing,
Roman says as he glances toward Malcolm.
I had her loaded up in the trunk of my SUV to take her back to Mason Godfrey. 20 minutes later, she popped up and scared the hell out of me.
It catches me off guard when I look over to Sigrid and see the smile growing on her lips. What? I bark. She shakes her head and doesn't fight her smile. I knew you were destined for something big, my dear niece. Look at all the things we have discovered about you, and we have yet to uncover what your gift is.
Gift?
Roman questions sharply, looking from Sigrid to me and back to Sigrid.
And you two are related?
I let out a sigh, pinching the bridge between my eyes. Well, you know every damn detail now. Sigrid thinks since my mother was gifted that I will be too. I know you are, Sigrid corrects. I felt it the moment I met you. It will manifest when the time is right. We're related, I explain, looking at Roman and letting my hand fall to my thigh with a clap. Distantly, back a few generations. But my mother was from Norway as well. Sigrid is related to the Eriksons. Roman shakes his head as he places his hands on his hips and turns away.
As if you weren't trouble enough, Juliet.
Darkly, I glare at the back of his head. Why wouldn't this have happened in front of Mason? Or Elena? They wouldn't make me feel threatened by them knowing the truth. But Roman, I don't know him. And the only bits of him that I do know are that he's a prick with a savage thirst for justice.
Juliet, this is dangerous information,
Malcolm says as he pulls his shirt back on and meets my eyes.
I told you before, I've never seen the child of a vampire and a gifted. You were rare before, but this curse, some will see you as a threat.
Because I can't truly be killed. This needs to stay quiet, Sigrid says as she steps forward and takes my hands. Between us, no one else can know, at least for now. Can we trust you to keep Juliet safe, Roman? He glances over his shoulder, back at the two of us. I hold his dark gaze, and I'm scared. I should leave town. I should get out of here. There are too many who know too many secrets about me. Dangerous secrets. They could use this against me. 2 months ago, I wouldn't hesitate in running. I wouldn't even pack a bag. I'd just get on a train and I'd ride as far as I could and then disappear into a new town. But things are different now. I have Elena. I have Mason. I have Sigrid. Hell, I even have Warren and Sebastian and Malcolm. And I'm months away from being a doctor. I won't get another situation like the one Sebastian Vincent is offering, where I can finish my training and work in the field I intended. I could run, but what the hell would I be running to? So, with bated breath, I wait for Roman's reply that could change my entire life.
I won't tell anyone,
he says.
Not unless I have to.
Roman, Sigrid says darkly as my stomach sinks into my feet.
I won't use it against Juliet,
he barks, his tone sharp. His eyes flick to mine, and I see conflicted rage and confusion in them.
But I can't make promises that the need will never arise when she will need me to break the promise.
That's a response I never would have expected. It's far more thoughtful than I would have anticipated. But as I hold his gaze, I know he means it. When Roman DeLuca says something, it's an unbreakable vow. I hear his phone buzz in his pocket, and Roman takes it out to check the screen.
It's Elena. She's tried calling twice already. Mason has called twice.
He looks back at me.
We need to get you home.
Not for much longer, I say, the words tightening my throat. When Roman's eyes narrow in question, I continue. Mason and I are done. I'm starting my apprenticeship with Dr. Vincent in a few days. He's got an apartment for me near the hospital. I'm moving out of Godfrey Tower. No one says anything to this. It's news, new information.
We need to go,
Roman says, instead of asking more questions. Rest easy, dear Juliet, Sigrid says, as she pulls me to her, squeezing me in a hug. Your secret will stay buried with us. You know I'm here whenever you need. I do know, I say, as I hug her to me. That's evidenced by the fact that she was my very first thought. I came straight here. Thank you. I step back toward the door. Oh, you may want to borrow a shirt, she says. It might do some harm returning to Mason, wearing no shirt accompanied by Roman DeLuca. I look at Roman, and then down at myself, and blush. Hard. Good idea. Sigrid smiles and disappears up the stairs. What's the beef between you two anyway? I ask, as I fold my arms over my bare midriff. Roman rolls his eyes and shrugs.
When you come from completely different lives, it's a little hard to find some common ground.
That's it? I question with a barely suppressed scoff. You two just don't get along because you don't have a common past?
Leave it alone, Juliet,
Roman warns, with a dark tone. I hold my hands up in surrender as Sigrid walks back down the stairs and hands me a shirt. Thank you, I offer, for everything. Be safe, she says, with a smile as she and Malcolm walk Roman and I to the door. I try to smile in return, but I'm not sure if I manage. Roman and I walk down the stairs, and, color me a little shocked, Roman holds the passenger door open for me. I give a muttered thanks as I climb in, and he shuts the door. He slides into his own seat, starts the vehicle, and puts it in drive.
I hope you're a good liar,
he says, as we aim back in the direction of Godfrey Tower.
Elena and Mason are going to interrogate us. You disappeared. I haven't been answering. And Pablo's dead now. We need to get our story straight.
Chapter 2. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. I'd stood in front of Mason and Elena, next to Roman, and we told the lie. I'd gotten a strange call from someone claiming Elena was in trouble. I didn't really think she was. It seemed like a trap, so I'd called Roman. True to my reckless nature, I'd snuck out of the building, and we'd both hunted Pablo down. Roman staked him and ripped him to pieces. That last bit was at least true. We'd stuffed his body parts in different garbage bags and deposited them in half a dozen different dumpsters around the city. I wonder if that part is true. I did watch Roman tear him to pieces. He'd said Pablo was in a dumpster, just not how many. Well, now that he's dead, you can stop being such a dick to Juliet, Elena says with a no-bullshit look at Roman.
With how reckless she is, I somehow doubt this will be the last of the trouble we see her in,
Roman says as he turns to leave. The words feel real. They probably are. But there's that little change in his eyes. It's the kind of bond shared when two people have a secret between them. Why did it have to be Roman?
Thank you, Roman,
Mason calls out just before he reaches the elevator.
For taking care of Pablo.
Roman just gives a grunt and a nod and disappears into the elevator as it slides open. You're not looking to take advantage of this immortal life, are you? Elena glowers. She crosses to me and pulls me into a hug. If only she knew. Sorry, it's just my nature, I give the lame excuse. She releases me, looking into my eyes. Are you really moving out now? My eyes slide from hers, over her shoulder, to her twin brother. My chest gives a little twist. There's pain in his eyes, and I know it's in mine too. Just a few days ago, I told Mason that I love him, and he'd said the words back. But not in the way of being in love. Not in the way that means we'll be together for the rest of our lives. It's in the kind of having each other's backs, even if we can't be together. It's in the way that I will be his friend, even if the next period of time is going to be hard. It's time, I say simply, as I look back at my best friend. I'm ready to start my apprenticeship. I miss working. I miss hospitals. It's what I've dreamed about doing for a long time now. Elena lets out a hard breath and studies me for a moment. The expression on her face is complicated. She doesn't want me to go because we are best friends. We've had so much time together since I've just been across the hall, since we worked in the same building, but she never approved of my relationship with her brother, not after I resurrected. So this makes that better, easier, simpler. Okay, she says simply. Do you want any help packing? I offer her a smile and shake my head. I really don't have that much. The clothes and shoes you got me, a few other things. That's what happens when you have to abandon your old life. Because you didn't know you were a vampire, resurrected, and then killed the daughter of another very important vampire, I'd had to cut my losses and run. I'd literally never gone back to my apartment. I wonder what the landlord did with all my stuff. Okay, Elena repeats with a sad smile. I want you to call me once you're settled. I want to make sure Sebastian didn't find some hellhole for you to live in. I chuckle and nod. She turns and, with a sympathetic touch to her brother's shoulder, she heads back into her penthouse. Hi, I say quietly as I walk up to Mason. Hey, he says, his voice thick. There's sadness in his eyes. He wasn't the one who ended this. He knew it was the right thing, but he wasn't the one to make the call. If you don't want to be home while I pack up, I get that, I say as we turn and walk to his door. It's fine, he says. I can help you for a few minutes, and then I need to get on a call with Singapore. I just nod, and awkwardly, we walk to my bedroom together. There are too many reminders in here. Mason and I spent more than a few nights in my bed, even if we never had sex. It was a constant exercise in my self-control not to kill him when we were getting too close. I've tasted his blood dozens of times. We've swam out in the balcony pool together so many times. Everywhere I look around this penthouse, it's memories of this sweet, if not exceptionally, short time in my life. Mason walks into the closet and grabs the only piece of luggage I have off of a top shelf. He unzips it and lays it on the ground. We're still going to talk, right? I ask tentatively as I take a shirt off a hanger and fold it. It's not always going to be this hard. We'll get to that place, won't we? Mason slides his hand into the pockets of his trousers, and I realize I've never seen him wear casual clothes. Ever. He lets out a hard breath. We will, Juliet. I mean it. No matter what happened between us, I will always be your friend. He shakes his head. I just wanted things to happen differently. We can drive ourselves crazy always wondering what if, I say, as I lay a hand on his chest. I think it's better to just be grateful for the time we had, the lessons we learned, and know that everything is going to turn out the way it's supposed to. Mason takes my hand and raises it to his lips, pressing a kiss to my palm. I know, he says against my skin. Want to pull those shoes down for me? I ask, trying to turn the direction of this conversation around. So he does. Mason pulls everything up high down for me. Hey, is there any chance you have a spare old phone anywhere? I ask. Mine kind of shattered into a million pieces tonight. Mason chuckles and shakes his head. At this point, no one is surprised by my stupid moves anymore. There's one in my bottom desk drawer. If you take it to Donnie on IT on the 7th floor, he can get it set up for you. Thanks, I offer with a smirk. And just then, his phone starts ringing. Take it, I say with a nod. I can finish this up. There's a heavy look in his eyes, like there should be some big goodbye. as if he knows that when he comes back from work that I'll be gone, because I will. But this isn't a goodbye forever. We're making sure of that. We'll still see each other. So he just nods, pulls his phone out as he steps out of my closet and heads downstairs to his main office. I look around my closet, and some of the differences between me and the Godfreys become stark. I have one piece of luggage. I have way too many clothes now, thanks to Elena. But as a kid, all I ever had was trash bags. You can fit all kinds of things into trash bags. So, when my suitcase is filled, I go to the kitchen, take the roll of trash bags, and return to my closet. I fill them one by one. Elena has gone so overboard in the last few months. I've never owned this many clothes in my entire life. It feels ludicrous, filling trash bags with designer labels. Some of these pieces cost hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, on their own, and I'm just stuffing them in trash bags. Just as I'm about to finish the last bag for my closet, there is a knock on the door. I climb to my feet and jog down the hall to answer it. Looking through the peephole, I smirk and shake my head. Donnie, I say as I open it.
Mr. Godfrey asked me to set this up for you and bring it up,
He says with a slight bow, which is so ridiculous. He holds an opened box in his hand, revealing a definitely new phone, one that looks top of the line.
It's been backed up with all of the information you had stored in the cloud. There should be just about everything in there.
Thank you, I say with a smile, as I take the box he extends. You're a wizard, Donnie.
Probably somewhere in my line,
He says with a little bit of a smile before he turns and goes back to the elevator. I chuckle as I close the door. I pull the phone out of the box, and it immediately illuminates to life. I slowly make my way back to my bedroom as I turn it on and look through my contacts. Nervously, my finger hesitates over the name. The second chapter of my life has closed, and a new one is about to open. There will be new close contacts, new environments, new places to go and live. But I'm the child of unexpected change, the spokesperson for shifting foundations. So, I tap the name and hold the phone up to my ear.
Juliet.
His smooth voice answers after just 2 rings. Sebastian, I say, imagining the vampire's smile that's surely pulling on those lips. I hope I'm not interrupting any important surgeries. He chuckles on the other line.
Well, I don't usually schedule too many of those at 3 a.m.
Oh, I laugh at myself, because my sense of time is so out of whack right now. I guess dying and mysteriously resurrecting again will do that. So, I was wondering if there's any chance you meant it when you said to call you if I needed help moving?
Of course.
He says.
When should I be there?
You busy now? I ask, cringing at myself in my bathroom mirror. I'm just finishing packing the last few things. I'll apologize for the number of clothes in advance. Elena might have a slight addiction.
There's no might or slight about that.
He chuckles in that smooth, way too sexy way of his.
And no problem. I can be there in 20 minutes.
Perfect, I say, and he says goodbye. I take a deep breath and stare at myself as I hang up. My pulse is racing. My entire body feels a little too aware, a little too awake. Sebastian once called me out for not liking him very much. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't like him, I just didn't know him. I didn't trust him. And then he came to rescue me with the others, the night Pablo captured and tortured me. And he'd shared just a little bit of his story, his history, with me. And I found he'd lived through pain and fear too. That night, all I'd wanted to do was keep talking to him, to keep learning what he'd lived through. Because, for once, I didn't feel like the only one with a dark heart and massive trust issues. And now, I'm going to work with that man. That man is setting me up with a job, an apartment. Snap out of it, I tell myself in the mirror, and set to grabbing the last few things laying around. Exactly 20 minutes later, to the second, there is a knock on the door. My heart is in my throat, pounding in my ears, and that is so damn embarrassing, because the second I open the door, Sebastian will be able to hear it. I take 5 deep, calming breaths as I slowly walk down the hall and then turn into the entryway. I pull one last breath in through my nose, letting it out through my mouth, and pull the door open. I've thought it before, and I still think it now. Sebastian Vincent is the most vampire-looking man ever. He has some of the most intense eyes I've ever seen, and they're so dark they almost look black. There's something about his lips, as if I can sense the dangerous fangs just behind them. And the set of his shoulders. Sebastian looks like he's always 2 seconds away from transforming into a cyclone of power and history.
Juliet,
He says smoothly, his tone low. My eyes meet his, and something sparks low in my stomach. Nerves, excitement, anxiety, wonder. Sebastian, I echo with his own name. I pull the door open wider and step aside, letting him in.
I've heard of the Godfrey penthouses, but I've never stepped foot in one,
He says as he looks around. He's dressed in jeans and a black t-shirt, all of which are fitted perfectly to his body. He looks out of place in Mason's over-the-top penthouse, except no one would deny the power that radiates off this night councilman.
Somehow, it doesn't surprise me.
You mean Elena doesn't invite you over for Sunday brunch? I say in mock shock. Sebastian chuckles and shakes his head.
The Godfreys are picky about who they associate with as personal friends. I have yet to make that cut. So I suppose it says something about you that you've so quickly infiltrated that inner circle.
Not sure if you're calling me a gold digger or high class, but neither is accurate, I say as I turn and walk down the hall back to my bedroom. It's a test. I need to figure out my boundaries with Sebastian. I need to know how I can push him, how he'll push back.
It means you're a strong woman, Juliet,
He clarifies as he follows me to the bedroom.
Not just any woman can stand at Mason's side. You're not like them, but you're no less fierce.
Yeah, well, I've stepped aside, I say, as I linger awkwardly in the bedroom, sliding my hands into my back pockets. Mason needs to find the right queen, and I'm not her. Cautiously, I look over at Sebastian, catching his eyes. It's hard to gauge what he's thinking. I don't know if I'll ever get used to how intense his gaze is. It makes him look like he's always either thinking about death, judgment, or maybe sex.
You were born to wear a crown,
Sebastian says finally.
but I can't say that I'm sorry to hear that.
He crosses to the pile of trash bags and looks down at them with a scowl. What's that supposed to mean? I ask, with the slightest quake in my voice. Sebastian looks over his shoulder at me.
Mason was always too good for you.
His words send a cold chill of goosebumps washing over my entire body. I see it in his eyes. Sebastian doesn't say it to be cruel. He says it with chilling insight into our relationship. I'm not polished or shiny. I'm not black and white. Mason and I couldn't have come from any more different backgrounds. I've stolen food to fill my empty stomach. I've punched half a dozen people. I've lied to protect myself. Sebastian is completely right. Mason is too good for me.
You're Juliet Doe, and you're moving your belongings with trash bags,
He asks, not lingering on his previous comment. Trash bags are what I know, I say, with a slightly embarrassed shrug. Not too many nice bags given to foster kids. Why go out and spend money on fancy luggage when these'll do the trick? Sebastian smiles, and it's both dangerous and wicked at the same time.
You're a breath of fresh air, Juliet.
Why does he have this effect on me? When it comes to Sebastian Vincent, I constantly feel like I'm on the verge of a heart attack. Sebastian bends and gathers 3 bags into his arms and straightens.
Let's get loading.
It takes us 3 trips up and down the elevator to get it all. Sebastian is parked in front of the building, under the overhang, in a shiny silver truck with beefy tires. I have to say, this isn't the kind of car I expected you to drive, I say, as we drop the last of the bags into the bed and we climb into the cab.
That might be because this isn't my truck,
he says with a smile as he starts the engine.
It's borrowed from a coworker. My car would have fit about 2 of those bags.
There. That's more like what I'd imagined. He pulls out into the early dawn light without a single bit of traffic to fight. We head north and cross the Chicago River. We drive another 6 blocks or so, and we pass Sebastian's hospital. Just one more block, and he takes a right in the direction of Lake Michigan. And there he stops, in front of a building that faces the lake itself. It's modern. Simple, black-framed, rectangular windows make up the entire facade of the building. It's clean and straightforward, and can't be very old.
Welcome to your new home,
He says with a smile as he parks and climbs out. Nervous and a little bit excited, I climb out, and we both grab as many bags as we can manage. We step into a very simple lobby. There is no reception desk, only a hall leading to elevators. Sebastian leads us there and presses the button for the 18th floor.
Security in this building is good,
He says. He had to swipe a card to get the doors to open. Wait, speaking of security, I interrupt. Don't you have a bodyguard? Where is he? Sebastian actually rolls his eyes as we step onto the elevator.
I'm not gifted. I'm not a multi-billionaire like the Godfreys. I'm a doctor. My bodyguard, Rick, follows me to night council meetings, but that's it.
That's kind of a relief, I admit. Elena's bodyguard, Tabitha, makes me nervous. Sebastian just chuckles and moves on.
This building is all residential, so it should be pretty quiet. I've been buying a few apartments in this building over the last few years, so you don't need to worry about any asshole landlords breathing down your neck.
I don't know if you can declare yourself not an asshole, I say with a smirk as we continue to rise. Only others get to make that call. And as for being an asshole landlord, I make a clicking hiss sound. That remains to be determined. Sebastian just chuckles. The door opens and I follow him out. We walk down a hallway, past 8 doors, and then he pulls a set of keys from his pocket, awkwardly balancing the bags. And when he pushes the door open, my heart jumps 3 inches higher in my chest. Shit, Sebastian, I say as we step inside, and I drop the bags on the floor. All I needed was a bed and a shower. This... I shake my head and look over at him. It kind of feels like someone is trying to keep up with Mason.
After what I saw in that penthouse, I don't think this would be Mason's style,
Sebastian says with a smirk. He sets his bags down, too, and slides his hands into his pockets as he steps forward with me, taking it in. It's modern and beautifully simple. There's a modest but comfortably sized kitchen with smooth front cabinets. All the appliances are black, and the backsplash is glossy black as well. The floor is covered in what looks like polished concrete, and I mean polished. There's a simple dining table with seats for 6, and the living room is furnished modern as well. A dark blue couch rests against one wall, and 2 white leather chairs face the floor-to-ceiling glass walls that look straight out at Lake Michigan. Okay, I guess I can give you that one, I say, as we both walk to the windows and look out. The sun is teasing the horizon out over the surface of the lake. Already, I squint against the brightness, and there's barely any light out there. Your style is different. I feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end when Sebastian looks over at me. And it feels intriguing and terrifying at the same time.
I know you've been through a lot lately,
he says, his tone soft and rough at the same time.
More than usual. But I think you're incredibly brave. I know you want to run. I see it in your eyes. But you're staying.
I take in one shallow breath, and I cannot look at him. How? How does he keep saying these things? It's like he's rooted around in my mind, and he's the master of words who can vocalize exactly what I'm thinking. You kind of scare me, I admit, in a quiet, shaky breath.
I don't want you to ever be afraid of me, Juliet.
He breathes as he angles his body toward me. Slowly, I turn my head, letting my eyes rise from the floor up his entire body. Sometimes I'm afraid you can read my mind. Slowly, Sebastian raises a hand and brushes his fingertips along my cheek before he cups it for just a moment, brushing his thumb over my skin.
I think it's because pain and anger recognize pain and anger.
I am scared. Sebastian terrifies me. Because I've never met someone who knows my thoughts like this, who has the same look of rage and agony behind their eyes that reflects my own. I kind of feel like I'm suffocating, like all of the air is being sucked out of this apartment. But it's not bad, just scary.
Come on,
He says softly and drops his hand away from my face.
let's finish bringing up your things. You take the day to settle in, and then we'll talk about work tomorrow.
I blink 3 times, breaking out of what feels like a spell, and nod my head. I swallow once as I walk after him, out the door, down the elevator, and then down to the borrowed truck. Just a few minutes later, we drop the last of the bags on the floor, and Sebastian walks to a control on the wall. He presses a button, and, like magic, thick black shades begin lowering over the windows, blocking out the rising sun.
I use these same shades in my apartment,
He says, as we watch them lower.
they're the best you can get. The sun won't bother you. There's another control in the bedroom.
I swallow again and nod, looking around. It's a little overwhelming. Everything I'm feeling, the change, the beginning of this new chapter. Thank you, Sebastian, for all of it,
Of course.
he says softly.
Please, if you need anything.
I shake my head. I've gotten tired of being the pampered woman in the penthouse who doesn't have to lift a finger. I kind of want to do everything, but thank you. A smile crooks in one corner of his mouth, and he gives just a little nod.
See? Brave.
At that, he turns and walks to the door.
I'll meet you at my office in the hospital tomorrow just after sundown. Sound good?
That sounds great, I say, offering a smile as he nods and walks out the door. I take a deep breath and turn, looking around the apartment. Mine. I have my own space again. I have a job I'm starting tomorrow. I'll be back in a hospital. Finally. I have my own life again. Finally. Chapter 3. I forgot how much I missed this, but with every step around the hospital, it all comes rushing back. I love working in a hospital. I love learning about the complexities of the human body. I love the rush I get when time is ticking, and if we don't solve the problem quickly, things will get truly dire. Right on schedule, I show up at Sebastian's office the next day. It's beautifully normal, taking the walk from my apartment, around the block, and down the street, before walking through the front doors. I knock on his office door, and with that low, seductive voice, he tells me to come in. Sebastian has questions. He'd already requested my school transcripts. It's dangerous to talk to my former supervisor, considering I'd straight up disappeared, so instead, we have an interview. I'd been planning to go into neurology before, but now, things are a little different.
I get the feeling you'd enjoy working in the ICU,
Sebastian says, as he leans back in his chair.
or maybe the emergency room.
I take in a hard breath, wondering yet again how the hell he can read my mind like this. I think that might be a good fit. It's the rush, the unexpected, the never knowing what you're going to be dealing with from day to day.
Let's get you some scrubs and head out on a rotation,
He says with a smile. I get my own locker. I get half a dozen sets of scrubs and white jackets. I get a stethoscope. And with every person we meet, Sebastian introduces me as Dr. Juliet Doe. My eyes burn at that. Goosebumps flash over my entire body. And I get this rush, and it feels so damn right.
Ready for the real action?
Sebastian asks, as we push through the door to the emergency wing. Oh, I'm ready, I say, with a nearly manic smile. Yes, I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm out of practice. I haven't done a single thing medically in 3 months. But this is what I live for. We treat 2 gunshot wounds. I stitch up a man who's somehow stabbed himself. Sebastian and I talk to 4 police officers, all involved because these incidents were related to a crime. I reset a little boy's arm who fell out of his bunk bed. I make the diagnosis of a peanut allergy for a 3-year-old little girl when she comes in with her tongue so swollen she can barely breathe. Sebastian is within 15 feet the entire night. He's always there if I need an extra hand or another opinion. But he doesn't hover. He doesn't second guess me. He lets me run my own show, and any issue I ever had with Dr. Sebastian Vincent evaporates that night. At 5, when the shift change comes in, the two of us go back to the locker room, and I can't wipe the smile from my face.
Feels good to be doing something, doesn't it?
Sebastian asks, as he opens his own locker and hangs his jacket in it. Good grief, yes, I exclaim. Without thinking, I pull my scrub top off, tossing it in the huge bin, which contains a pile of logoed scrubs. I start to blush, realizing that I'm standing in front of Sebastian in just a plain white sports bra, but I grab my shirt from the shelf in my locker and pull it over my head. I honestly didn't even realize how damn bored I was getting in that tower until today, so thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. If he was embarrassed or surprised by me whipping my shirt off, he doesn't show it. Smooth and controlled as ever, Sebastian only smiles and takes his bag from the locker, hooking it over his shoulder.
You're very welcome, Juliet. To be honest, I pulled your transcripts the same day Mason asked me about you doing an apprenticeship. I knew you wouldn't be a problem. I think by the end of the year, we can get your board certification.
You can really pull that off? I ask, pulling my street shoes back on. Even with the disruption in my previous residency?
Sebastian smirks. I could get it for you today if I thought you were ready. But my conscience needs to see you in action for a while before I can make that call. Trust me, Juliet, it won't be long. You're a natural at this.
I blush under his compliments, but oh, it feels so damn good to be recognized for doing what you love. Hey, I say, a little more hesitant now. I know this isn't how things usually work, but I was hoping you could pay me. Nothing extreme or anything, but honestly, I'd really like to pay you rent. And, be able to pay for my own groceries.
Sebastian chuckles. That was always a given. Swing by and talk to Monica in the payroll department, down on the first floor. She has your contract. You can go over the details with her. She can help you get your paycheck set up on deposit.
It's like I don't even have to ask. Everything that I'd hoped for with this situation is just lining up. Thank you, I offer once more. I've honestly not felt this much gratitude and genuine excitement for the future since I was accepted into medical school.
You don't have to keep saying that. Sebastian chuckles. Now, try to get some rest. I want you back here tonight.
I give a nod and watch as he walks out of the locker room. Sometimes people surprise you. I'd thought Sebastian was just a habitual flirt who used his smooth smile and smooth talking to get whatever he wanted. But he's generous, thoughtful. Turns out, sometimes you can trust people more than you think. I set out in search of Monica and eventually am pointed in the right direction. She has my contract, all right, and when I see the number, my eyes nearly bug out of my head. This is what Dr. Vincent said to pay me? I ask as I blink again, waiting for the number to make sense. He was very specific about the number, she says. It's a great starting salary, but you have to remember the cost of living in Chicago. Dr. Vincent pays all of his employees well. Positions rarely open up in this hospital because of him and the way he runs things. I shake my head in complete disbelief. I went into this field knowing doctors make great money, but the number on the page, I didn't expect to make this kind of money until I'd been in practice for at least 5 years. Now, if you'll fill out this form and bring it back, I can get the automatic deposit set up, the woman says as she hands me a piece of paper. Bring it back tomorrow and I'll get it taken care of. Thanks, I mutter as I take the papers she hands me and read them over as I walk out of the office. A bank account. I need one of those. I'd had one in New York, but now everything in the world is different. Shouldering my bag, I don my sunglasses and step out into the lightning morning. I grab a coffee on the way back to my apartment. I jump in the shower. I get ready for the day. I even put on a touch of lipstick. And then I head back out into the hustle and bustle of Chicago, aiming for the first bank I find to open a new account and start living my life. I treat 3 vampire bites. Actually, they need a blood transfusion because the idiot who brings them in took too much, and according to Sebastian, they're only an hour from turning into a bitten. We treat a man who has amnesia, magically bestowed upon him by the woman he slept with the night before. I find that people end up in the emergency room all the time doing weird sex stuff. Gross. Sebastian lets me assist in a surgery to remove a buckshot spray out of a teenage boy's backside. Don't play with guns, kids. 2 sisters walk in, still kicking the crap out of each other, both of them bleeding from various wounds inflicted by each other. And we end up talking to the police every single night, giving reports of the insanity that wanders in through the doors. The first week of my apprenticeship is freaking great. I thought I was happy before, being in Chicago. I thought I was happy figuring out this new life. I thought I was happy following the Godfreys around, making out with Mason. But this? I step out my door every day, absolutely thrilled to see what the day is going to bring. I'm excited for once. When I see Sebastian every night at the beginning of a shift, I am genuinely excited and happy to be working side by side with him. 1 week becomes 2, and finally, my best friend finds the time to come visit me for the first time since I moved out. It's evening, and this is one of the first nights I haven't worked since I started at the hospital. When Elena's knock sounds at the door, I climb off of the couch and cross to it. "I'll admit," she says as she steps inside. Out in the hall, I see Tabitha stand next to my door, clearly having no intention of coming inside. "I was disappointed to have you move out," Elena continues. "But the 10-minute drive is definitely better than the 3-hour flight it used to be to visit you." "Heck yes it is," I say as I squeeze her to me, smiling at her familiar scent, the feeling of her inhumanly strong arms around me. "Where have you been lately?" "Ugh," she says in disgust. "Los Angeles. We had a client who was throwing a fit about some paperwork, and I thought it would be easier to smooth things over in person. Do you know how much sun there is in Los Angeles?" I chuckle and cross to the kitchen, opening the fridge. There, I find a stash of blood bags. Perks of working at the hospital. I get as much blood as I want, and I don't even have to pay for it. The rest of the vampires in Chicago have to deal with Sebastian's dealers. "At least it's warm," I say, as I grab 2 bags. I walk with Elena to the chairs that face the glass and open the window coverings now that the sun has disappeared behind us. "Not that it even matters," Elena points out as she takes one of the offered bags. "When was the last time you felt cold?" "Good point," I say, with the tilt of my head. I hadn't ever thought about it. The fact that I don't really feel temperature differences now that I'm an immortal vampire. I sink into one chair, looking out over the massive lake in front of us. "You're different, Juliet," Elena says as she sits beside me. I look over at her, meeting her eyes. She offers me this little smile. "You know, ever since I've met you, you've been bitter and a little angry and sharp and snappy, which I love about you," she adds with a lopsided smile. "But today, I don't know if I've ever seen you happy. Not the all the way through kind of happy. You seem happy." I smile as I look down at the bag of blood in my hand, which is kind of ridiculous. But as I look up to my best friend, I know the words are true. "I am," I answer. I mean, nothing has gone how I expected in the last few months, but I think maybe they were setting me up to recognize how I'm feeling now. I love this apartment. I love working at the hospital so much. I think I'm even starting to love Chicago. She laughs at that. "You're even getting used to its random, terrible smells." "Smelly and all, Chicago is okay," I laugh with her, raising my blood in cheers to hers. We both drain them, even though the coldness of it is disgusting. "So, how is it working with Sebastian?" Elena asks, with the arch of an eyebrow. I sigh and look out the window again. "It's not been what I expected." Uh-oh, she says seriously. I shake my head. No, it's been better. I didn't think I liked him the first few months I knew him, but he's easy to be around. I don't know, we just seem to have a lot in common. I guess I hadn't thought about it, but from what I do know about him, you're right. Elena says, though the words come out resentful. Just be careful. I swear, he looks at you like he'd drink you up if given the chance. I blush hard at that, but refuse to look at Elena. Once upon a time, I would say that was true. But as I've gotten to know him, I can't think of him as just a habitual flirt who looks with greed upon anything with boobs. He's a lot more than that. I think that's just second nature for some men, unfortunately. I try to deflect. I don't think that's the case here, Juliet, Elena says as she shakes her head. Just proceed with caution. I'm pretty sure you're never going to approve of any man I'm ever around, I point out as I look back at her. You're my best friend, she says, her expression serious. It's my job to bear fangs at anyone who might have less than honorable intentions. And what about you? I ask, as I arch an eyebrow. Have you gone out with anyone since you broke up with Alden? No, she says in disgust as she takes another long pull from her bag. I don't know that I'll trust another man again. They all either cheat or just want my money. Good for you, I say, as I cheer my bag to hers again. Don't let any eggplant wielders take advantage of you. Amen, she says with a laugh. And it's the perfect night. A night that feels so damn normal, laughing about men, and doing nothing at all. Chapter 4. It doesn't seem possible, but 3 entire months go by in a blink. Suddenly, it's the end of September. The days get shorter, which is awesome for a vampire. The days are cloudier, which is awesome for a vampire. And the temperatures get crisper, which doesn't matter much for a vampire. It does rain more frequently, which I'm conflicted about. Most people find the sound of rain comforting. But to me, it sounds like chaos. It sounds like my childhood, and wondering if the roof of a ratty old trailer house is going to start leaking over my bed in the middle of the night again. But 3 months come and go so fast. I'm already a huge portion of the way through my apprenticeship time, and in no time at all, I'll be board certified. I love it at the hospital. I settle into a regular schedule in the emergency room, and it's where I tell Sebastian I want to stay. Screw boring neurology. Never knowing what's going to happen night to night is my jam. They say that time heals all wounds, and it's true. With every day, the ache in my chest goes away. When I go over to Godfrey Tower to see my best friend, it doesn't hurt anymore when I see Mason. The memories are there, but they're sweet and wonderful instead of heartbreaking and painful. I was never in love with Mason. Perhaps the idea of him. Maybe I was overly grateful he swooped in and saved me from a wildly uncertain time after my resurrection. But it wasn't love. It was, and is, friendship. And over time, I see the hurt and pain lessen in Mason's eyes. Time is kind like that. I wonder if he, too, realizes that we've been apart for as long as we were together. On one early morning, I wash my hands in the locker room and walk over to my locker. Sebastian stands at his, quietly gathering his things. His brows are intense, and it's obvious there's something serious rolling through his mind. I've never seen him as quiet as he has been today. Hey, are you okay? I ask, as I grab my own bag from the locker. You've seemed kind of down today. His eyes flick over to mine. Normally, he'd offer a wry smile and say something slightly inappropriate, but he just stares back into his locker and pulls his bag out. September 30th has never been my favorite day. Something drops in my stomach. When you go through traumatic events, dates tend to stick in your mind. I know Sebastian has been through some shit, and from the look on his face, I think I know how he's feeling, and it's dark. Want to go break shit and talk about it? I ask, and I genuinely mean it. It has the desired effect. He crooks half a smile and huffs one laugh.
I don't think so, but thanks for the offer.
Well, I know you haven't eaten anything all night, so why don't you finally show me this infamous penthouse funded by blood dealers, and I'll make you some breakfast. His eyes flick to mine, the surprise in them telling me I've caught him off guard with my offer. He doesn't answer immediately. He studies me for a long moment. I can't tell what's going on behind his eyes, and it's making me nervous. I tend to push people away when my head goes into the dark recesses of my past. But being alone during those times is rarely what's actually good for me, even if I won't admit it. I know that darkness in Sebastian's eyes. After everything he's done for me, I can't just let him go home and be alone.
Okay,
He says simply. I flash him a smile and nod, and together we walk out of the locker room and then out of the hospital. I trust you have some supplies, or do we need to swing by the store?
I get weekly deliveries.
Sebastian says, his voice dull and flat.
They were just dropped off yesterday.
Perfect, I say, my tone too perky. I need to tone it down. Fake isn't something I've ever once appreciated, especially not when the darkness floods to the surface. In silence, we walk 2 blocks, and for the first time, I learn where Sebastian lives. I knew it was close to the hospital. What I didn't know was that he lives in the building right across the street from mine. We walk into a luxurious lobby and step into the elevator. Sebastian presses the button for the top floor, and he leans against the wall with a heavy sigh, his head hanging toward the floor. I'm not going to push you to talk about September 30th if you don't want to, I say. But sometimes the black ick gets a little less thick when you share it with someone else. Sebastian looks over at me, and there, I see appreciation.
Food first, then maybe.
I simply nod, and the elevator doors open. I follow Sebastian out, and he unlocks one of 4 doors on this floor. This is not what I expected. We step into a penthouse that is huge, yes, but I kind of expected a sexy, dark layer of seduction and class. But Sebastian's home is white. I mean, everything is white. The walls, the kitchen, the furniture. Even the floor is polished white marble, with only a few gray veins running through it. The entire penthouse is narrow, stretching along what has to be one entire side of this skyscraper. A long galley kitchen gleams, polished and buffed to the point that it looks like it's never been used. Columns hold up the ceiling, lined up down the middle of the living area. It feels like we could fall right over the edge. The windows are so perfectly clean. A huge dining table is perched on the edge, its surface smooth glass. Huge, comfortable-looking white couches circle up around a beautiful gas fireplace. It's so clean and bright, and surprisingly, homey feeling. I always knew Sebastian was organized and clean. His home is obsessively so, but there is something soothing about it. This place is beautiful, I say, with a hint of awe in my tone as we walk inside, and I look around for a place to set my bag down. Everything is so damned polished, I don't want to smudge anything.
Thanks,
he says absent-mindedly as he walks in.
It was just finished last year. I lived in your building before that.
I walk to the glass, staring out. Lake Michigan looks massive right now. It definitely dominates most of the view. But to the right, I see Navy Pier with its huge Ferris wheel. And if I look even harder down, I see my own building. I try to pick out my apartment, but we're so high up it's hard to differentiate the lower levels.
I think I'm going to go shower, Juliet,
Sebastian says, his tone still flat.
Make yourself at home.
I watch him walk down a hall, and maybe I'm human after all, because my heart is breaking for him, and I don't even know what's going on. But food can fix just about anything, so I turn to the kitchen and get to snooping through everything. Growing up, there were often adults who didn't bother making meals. There were frostbitten meals in the freezer. There were groceries paid for by the state in the fridge and the cupboards. So I learned how to use a microwave when I was young. When I got sick of mushy, tasteless meals, I started experimenting with actual ingredients and the stove or oven. I'm by no means a great cook, but I can definitely manage without embarrassing myself. I pull together the ingredients for an over-the-top omelet. I chop veggies, I find a package of bacon, and cook it up in small pieces. I pull out some salsa and sour cream. My mouth is watering, and my stomach growls loudly. I haven't eaten since yesterday at lunch. Just as I'm putting the finishing touches on our breakfast, I hear a door open down the hall, and Sebastian steps out, scrubbing his hands down his face. His hair is still dripping wet, but my eyes immediately go to his chest. I'm not sure he toweled off at all, because the plain white t-shirt he's wearing is clinging to his skin, turned slightly see-through. Dr. Vincent isn't just a brilliant doctor, he's also stupidly fit, and maybe should consider changing his career to underwear model. But with bare feet and wearing black sweats, he makes his way back to the kitchen.
That smells incredible,
He says, as I slide a plate across the island toward him. He pulls out a bar stool and sits. It's better than starving, I say with a slight smile as I carry my plate around to the other side of the island and sit next to him. What the hell? I nearly groan. He even smells amazing. I stab my fork into the food and scoop a heaping mound into my mouth. I smile a little in pride. It tastes amazing. I glance over and see Sebastian push his food around, and finally, he takes one bite.
This is great,
He says, glancing over at me.
You like to cook?
I shrug. Not particularly, but every now and then it's nice. It feels kind of normal. Normal people always seemed to have a mom around to cook for them. So, every now and then, it's nice to pretend. He looks over at me, and I see the look in his eyes deepen. We've shared tiny bits of our history here and there, but not many details. I've been dying to know, but how do you ask someone to just share their darkest times with you?
Your last name is Doe,
He says.
Can I assume that wasn't actually a family name?
I swallow another bite and shake my head. Once upon a time, I never ever would have considered sharing a single bit of my history with Sebastian Vincent, but the past 3 months have changed all that. I was found next to my mother just hours after I was born. She was dead, and the police had no way to identify who she was. They had no way of knowing who my father was either, so I was named a baby Doe. I guess it was some social worker who had a little bit of twisted humor. She named me after one of the most famous tragedies ever. Sebastian smirks.
The universe likes to have its fun, doesn't it?
I nod. But thanks to Malcolm, I did learn my parents' names. I should either be a Bonnie or Erickson. My parents were never married, as far as we can tell. Then again, I guess traditionally I would have taken my dad's name. But I don't know. Something about the name Juliet Bonnie just doesn't flow right. And, I've lived 28 years with my current name.
Bonnie,
Sebastian muses.
the name sounds familiar.
That's because he was a pirate, I say, with an entertained smile. True blue buccaneer. He has some wicked scars and everything.
Has?
Sebastian asks, as he forks another bite. He's eating more now, which makes me very pleased. I nod. Malcolm says he's still alive. They haven't said it outright, but I think he and Sigrid have been trying to track him down.
Would you want to meet him if they can find him?
I stare at the backsplash, but I'm not really seeing anything. The question rolls around in my brain. My automatic response is, of course. Learning I still have a parent alive was such a shock. Family. My father? Of course I want to meet him. I'm honestly not sure how I'll react when I do meet him, I confess, as I look over at him. I felt abandoned my entire childhood. I knew my mother had died, but I had always hoped that my dad would magically appear and save me from the nightmare that was my life. But he never came. I stuff another bite into my mouth, chewing without tasting anything. It's hard not to get angry and resentful, I mean, I had no idea if he was alive. I had no idea if he'd ever loved the woman who gave birth to me. I didn't even know if he had known I was coming. But I'd hoped, and he never came. So I worry a little that the trauma might come to the surface in some ugly ways. I know I'm not sharing all the information, and it's on purpose. I might trust Sebastian more now, but the truth about my mother and why my father couldn't find us is dangerous. The fewer people who know the truth about my mother and her ability to weave curses, the better.
Trauma has a way of shaping us.
Sebastian muses. He takes his last bite and then pushes his plate away. He folds his arms over the countertop, and his eyes go a little unfocused.
My mother was raped by a vampire when she was 16. The man disappeared, moved on, and a few weeks later, she found out she was pregnant.
Oh, shit. Just those few sentences, and I'm already hearing a darker story than I ever expected.
Her parents turned her out, claimed she'd asked for it,
he says, disgust obvious in his voice.
So, she lived in a hovel, worked as a laundress to try to survive. And then I was born.
Goosebumps flash over my skin. I remember Sebastian telling me just a few months ago that he was 119 years old. That means he was born at the very end of the 1800s. Circumstances for exceptionally young, single mothers weren't great back then.
She did her best to love me,
Sebastian says.
But under the circumstances, what happened to her? How could she not feel like I had ruined her life? She wasn't a bad mother, but she was sad. Always. I think that's what took her down. She just kind of gave up. And then she got sick. She died when I was 16.
What a cursed number.
I went to work at a factory then, and moved into a house with a few other guys. It was rough living. Dirty work. Booze and women filled that house. I made some pretty shitty decisions back then. But when I was 21, I saw her.
I watch as Sebastian sits a little straighter, as he takes a deeper breath.
Madeline Kensington was good. Pure. Beautiful. Her father owned a shoe repair shop. They weren't rich by any means, but she was still way out of my league.
He crooks a smile, and it's nice to see him reflect on a happy memory.
She made me want to be a better man. I cleaned up my act, for her. I elevated my status at the factory, for her. And when I knew I was the kind of man she deserved, I asked her on a date, and she said yes. I asked her to marry me 5 months later, and she said yes.
He lets out a long breath and lays his palm flat on the white countertop, smoothing his hand over it.
Her father was hesitant. He knew what kind of man I'd been, but he'd still given his permission. We were married on a perfect day in June. And just 3 months later, she was pregnant with our first child.
Oh no. A wife? A child? The little bit of history Sebastian shared with me did not include a family.
Jonathan was born absolutely perfect,
he says, smiling as he blinks. His eyes have welled, but the tears don't break free.
The happiest baby. Not the best sleeper, but he was always so happy. And when he was 3, Madeline got pregnant again, and our daughter, June, was born.
Dread is filling me up like cold tar.
I had no idea what my father was,
Sebastian says.
I had no idea that vampires existed. So, I didn't know what the hell I was when I was 33 and got sick. I laid in that hospital for a week before I died. I woke up, already buried in the cemetery, and had to dig my way out of the grave.
Shit, I breathe. I can't even imagine how terrifying and confusing that must have been.
I tore through 3 people before I even registered what I was doing.
Sebastian continues.
I'd heard stories about vampires before, but the thought didn't even occur to me until a week after I resurrected. I stayed away from my family for a month before I dared to go talk to my wife.
I can only imagine how terrifying that must have been. At least I had Elena and Mason there to immediately explain what was going on. And I had the unfortunate benefit of not having anyone else in the world that I cared about. I didn't have to worry about hurting anyone because of my thirst. Sebastian had a wife and 2 kids.
Madeline was terrified,
he says, swallowing hard.
But she accepted what I was. We moved so that no one would question how I was alive again. And we lived for another 5 years as a happy family.
I try to do the math. Just how old were Sebastian's children?
I couldn't go out during the day, so I took a job as an undertaker.
he says, his tone going dark.
I stayed locked inside our house during the day. And then, one day, on September 30th, Madeline went to the kids' school to help out.
He scrubs a hand over his face, squeezing his eyes closed. He braces his elbows on the countertop for a moment, pressing his hands into his face, taking 2 deep breaths. I want to reach out and rub a comforting hand over his back. Something, anything. But from my own experiences, sometimes being touched when you're reliving the traumatic past isn't what you need.
I smelled the smoke and then heard the shouts,
he says. His voice is tight.
But it was the middle of the day. I ran out of the house, knowing it was coming from the school. But I was completely blinded by the sun. There were no sunglasses back then. I dashed through town in nothing but a searing white haze.
I hadn't even attempted it. Going out in the middle of the day without the special sunglasses Elena gave me, my senses practically stopped me in my tracks. Even dusk and dawn are painfully bright.
By the time I made it to the school, it was too late,
Sebastian says. His voice is rough, thick.
The roof had collapsed, trapping everyone inside. 2 teachers, 31 students, and my wife all died in that fire.
16 and 13. Sebastian's children weren't tiny little things when they died. Sebastian had teenagers. He'd had a family young, and they continued to age when he became immortal. And then they died. Sebastian, I say, my tone quiet and pained.
I didn't handle it well.
Sebastian pushes on, taking in a hard breath.
I blamed myself. If I hadn't been a vampire, if I hadn't been totally blinded by the sun, I might have made it to the school in time. Maybe I could have pulled them out in time. But I couldn't. I was this powerful, incredibly strong immortal, but the sun kept me from saving my family.
I can't hold myself back any longer. I reach out a hand and lay it on his arm. Sebastian doesn't look up. His brows furrow with intensity.
I went dark after that. I left town. I went north. I ended up in Brooklyn, and, well, I told you a little of what I did for the next few years.
He'd mentioned that he'd fought in underground boxing rings to support himself financially.
So, that's why I hate September 30th,
he says, as he sucks in a breath.
It's the day I lost everything. The day I lost everything that made me human, even if I wasn't still human when it happened.
I'm so sorry, I say, as he looks over at me. It wasn't... None of what you've gone through is fair. His eyes are red, bloodshot, but the tears have disappeared. Sebastian holds my gaze for a long moment, and I feel like he's searching my soul.
I think sometimes the universe just holds a grudge against people for no justifiable reason.
I squeeze his arm. I know exactly what you mean. Chapter 5. You are enjoying your new position? Sigrid asks, as she takes the vial of my blood and crosses to her refrigerator. She puts it on a shelf and closes it as I withdraw the needle from my own arm and press a cotton ball into it. I really am, I say, as I pack up the small stash of equipment I brought with me. And in just another month, I'll be fully certified. I shake my head. It's kind of hard to believe that it's almost done. I've been working toward this for 10 years. Endless hours of medical school, so many clinical hours, and now it's almost finished. It is very impressive, Sigrid says with a smile. She leans against her kitchen counter and folds her arms over her chest. You've overcome such obstacles. Now look at you, Dr. Juliette Doe. You really think this will work? I ask. Her saying my name reminds me of what we're doing here and why I just did a blood draw on myself. I do not know, Sigrid answers honestly. It is my gift to always be able to track the blood of my son, but I have never tried to track the blood of another. I look down at the tattoo on my left forearm. It's the condition of living in Chicago as a vampire. You must receive a rose tattoo laced with the blood of Sigrid's son, Warren. Once upon a time, Sigrid got pregnant at a young age. She wasn't able to raise the baby boy herself, so she had placed him for adoption. Only, her gift was that she always knew where he was, which was its own form of hell, considering she'd made the heartbreaking choice to place him with another family. They'd reunited when Warren was an adult, and they're slowly building a relationship. I don't know, I say, as I shake my head. I would only share half my DNA with my father. I want to think this will work, but logically, I have a hard time believing it will. Sometimes all we can do is extend some faith, Sigrid says wisely. I guess, I say absent-mindedly. I glance at the clock above her pantry and stand from the table. I better leave soon. I have to be at work in half an hour. Sigrid nods, and we both walk toward the front door. You've worked with Sebastian for a few years now, I say, pausing with my hand on the doorknob. What's your opinion of him? Over the past nearly 3 months, my view of him has changed. But as I've recently learned, a few months is an extremely small amount of time. In the 2 months Mason and I were together, I barely even got to know him, and I didn't even realize it until I knew it was time to end things between us. I might feel like I know Sebastian now, but it's only the same amount of time. Sebastian is a very confident and organized man, Sigrid answers. She props her elbow on the bottom rail of her beautiful stairs. He runs that hospital beautifully. He takes care of all the incidents that might give us issues when they come into that hospital. Sebastian is an exceptionally efficient Night Council member. I sense there is a but coming, I say, as something heavy settles into my stomach. Sigrid nods. But I think there is a darkness to Sebastian Vincent we will never understand. I think he keeps such a tight hold and control over every aspect of his life because he is containing pain. Dr. Vincent is a man who is constantly surrounded by people, yet I think the man is exceptionally lonely. Crack, splinter, ache, lonely, darkness, pain. I swear, there must be soul doppelgangers in this universe. The thought sends a wave of anxiety and fearful anticipation through me. But what am I anticipating? Thank you, I say as I twist the knob, for trying to find my father. You'll let me know if you make any progress? Of course, Sigrid says, as she steps forward, seeing me out. Have a nice night, Sigrid's bodyguard, Amy, calls as I walk past her. She's sitting on her front porch, pretending to read a book. Really, she's constantly keeping an eye on Sigrid, which is easy to do when she lives in the townhouse right next door. Night, I call. I like Amy. She's not a jerk like you'd expect of a security guard, but considering that is her job, I'm sure she could kick my ass. I set out down the sidewalk, aimed in the direction of the hospital. It's a bit of a walk from Old Town to where I'm going, but these legs no longer get tired, and the weather is kind of beautiful. The sun has nearly set, but it's cast the world in a blazing golden color that screams fall. Armed with my special sunglasses, I make my way through the world without pain. In the 2 days since Sebastian told me about his family and why he hates September 30th, I haven't been able to stop evaluating the man. I haven't been able to stop thinking about him. And the one time I slept in the last week, I dreamed about him. But as I reach the hospital doors, I take a deep breath, attempting to clear my head. I need to focus. The hospital is quiet when I reach it. The emergency room is quiet, and there's no one in the lobby. As I make my way to the locker room, I'm surprised when I step inside and find a woman standing there, talking to Sebastian, an insulated bag in her hand. Juliet, Sebastian says, I want you to meet Echo. She's one of my top employees who works outside the hospital. He means I'm his best dealer in the city, the woman says. There's a little mischief in her eyes, but she doesn't smile when she says it. Well, when you find a favorite source, why go anywhere else? I ask, playing into the moment. Echo just looks me up and down, and I'm not sure what kind of conclusion about me she arrives at. She's beautiful. I'd guess she's a few years younger than me, but considering I can smell she's a vampire, she could be a few hundred years old and just doesn't look it. She has tanned, perfectly caramel-colored skin, with pin-straight black hair that falls halfway down her back. Combined with her smoky eyes and flawless skin, she's kind of intimidating. If I had to guess her ancestry, I'd pick Indian. "I'll bring the money by your place in the morning," Echo says, as she eyes me once more and turns to leave. I watch her disappear around the corner and wait a few seconds before saying what's on my mind. "I don't think Echo likes me very much." Sebastian smirks.
Echo doesn't like many people. Plus, I think she's had some feelings for a while. I've tried to make it clear that I don't reciprocate them in the most polite way I could.
"And I'm a threat?" I ask, as I look over at him and arch an eyebrow. He wears that smirk again, but he looks slightly embarrassed.
It doesn't make you think any differently of me, saying a handoff to my dealer, knowing I'm profiting off selling blood.
I shrug. When you've grown up desperate, you judge differently from those who were handed everything. Look, I stole supplies to draw my own blood in attempt to find my father. I hold up the bag of supplies that I did indeed take from this very hospital. Might as well fess up to the boss now. Sebastian chuckles at that and shakes his head as he crosses to his locker.
When you grow up doing what you have to do to survive.
He trails off as he tips his head to one side and shrugs.
I trust you, Juliet. If you need something, I'm not going to question you.
That sends a tingle of warmth up my spine. As I pull my own locker open, Sebastian pulls his t-shirt up over his head and reaches into his locker for his scrub top. Oh, I shouldn't peek, but damn, when you look like that, how could anyone keep their eyes to themselves? Sebastian is toned. Mason was exceptionally lean, but Sebastian has more bulk to him. I mean, he looks like he could join the Army Rangers and not even tap into his vampire abilities. He looks like he could give Thor a run for his money in an Iron Man event. And he's covered in scars. A gash over his left pec, a slash over his back, going from his right shoulder blade, across his spine, to the lower left of his rib cage. There is a patch of what looks like burned skin going down his right side, before disappearing into the waistband of his pants. Shit. His body even looks as rough as mine. So, with a slight blush, I pull my own shirt over my head, tossing it into my locker. I feel Sebastian's eyes on me. I feel them lingering over my own scars. I grab the folded scrub top on the top shelf of my locker, and I pull it down over my body, covering those scars up.
Have you gone to the Chicago theater for a show yet?
He asks. His words come out a little tight. I blink at my locker once. Those weren't the words I expected to hear from him next. No. He pulls his white jacket from the locker and pulls it on.
I have tickets to the show on Friday. Would you like to go with me?
My eyes rip over to his as my heart starts beating a little faster. Sigrid is right. Sebastian is always confident. He is always in control. But right now, there's a vulnerability in his eyes that I've never seen before. But there's something about the way he looks at me with those intense eyes. A shot of thrill zings from my toes to my very core. I would, I say, surprising myself with the confidence in my answer. Slowly, a smile pulls on Sebastian's lips, and I feel the world shifting even more.
Dinner before?
He asks. I'll be ready by 7, I answer. There's nothing in the world like it when Sebastian looks at you like that, with heat and intensity. He looks like a predator eyeing his prey, but this prey has no instinct to run from this panther.
I'll pick you up then.
And he turns and walks out of the locker room, leaving me breathing fast and hard. Holy crap, I think I just agreed to a date with Sebastian. Chapter 6.
She bit me,
the man screams as he covers the puncture wounds in his neck. He's white as a sheet, his pupils dilated huge.
That bitch bit me.
My heart is pounding as I push my way into the room. The nurse is getting things ready, and I grab a pair of gloves from the box on the wall. My name is Dr. Doe, I say, trying to keep my tone calm. Why don't you tell me what happened? I pull up a stool and nod for the nurse to take his blood pressure.
I went out with this woman,
He says. He's breathing hard. Too hard.
The night was going pretty damn good. I invited her back to my place. We were kissing, and
He squeezes his eyes closed and shakes his head. I reach up, pulling his hand away from his neck.
she freaking bit me.
Oh, yeah. Those are unquestionably vampire fang bites. Are you sure? I question, as my eyes rise up to meet the nurse's. There wasn't any kind of an accident? Was there any alcohol involved tonight? The man scowls at me.
We'd had a few drinks, but the feeling of her fangs in my neck was pretty unforgettable. Holy shit,
he says in a breath as his eyes double in size.
That makes her a vampire, right? She definitely was drinking my blood. She can't. Am I losing my mind?
Sir, you've obviously been through something traumatic, but we're going to take care of you, I say, as I gather the supplies needed. He needs a transfusion. I'm not worried about him turning into a bitten, though I've yet to witness one of those, but he definitely might pass out.
Vampire,
he says breathily as he falls back against the bed, his hands twisting into his hair.
Shit, are there others out there? This is Chicago, not Transylvania.
Diana, do you know an Evelyn? I ask, as my pulse jumps. Of course. The nurse I've worked with so much answers me. Do you want me to call her in? I think that would be best, I say, as I get the transfusion line in and get some more blood going into his system. Diana nods and ducks out of the room.
Why didn't she kill me?
The man pants. He's breathing so hard he just might hyperventilate.
I mean, I think I might have passed out. When I woke up, she was long gone, and I was bleeding all over the damn couch.
Did you call the police? I ask, knowing I need to get some damn answers.
No, but I need to, don't I?
He asks, looking like he can't believe he didn't think of it before. He reaches for his phone in his pocket, but I push his hand away. We need to get you stitched up first, I say. Doesn't do you any good if you pass out again, does it? He simply nods and leans back in the bed again. Just try to relax, okay? I direct. In the 4 months that I have been working at this hospital, this is the first time that I have had to deal with this. Sebastian isn't here right now. The night council meets once a month, and tonight happens to be the night that they are meeting. Pride and excitement had nearly exploded my chest when Sebastian said I was in charge tonight. I was the attending doctor. There was one other doctor on call tonight in the emergency room, and Sebastian had named me the presiding doctor. If Dr. Holmes weren't so ancient and on the verge of retiring, he might have had a problem with it. But the man is so tired and worn out, he didn't even question it. It's a rush. It's so satisfying knowing that someone as experienced and powerful as Sebastian Vincent trusts me to be the one in charge. It's overwhelming, sure, but this is all part of claiming my new life. New situations are going to arise, and one by one, I am tackling them and taking charge. Just as I'm finishing stitching the last of this man's wounds, Diana returns, a woman with dark skin and even darker, curly hair in tow. She looks a little older than I am, maybe 35 or so. Are you Evelyn? I ask, as I snip the thread. I am, she says with a nod. She steps forward, her eyes fixed on the man in the bed. You must be Juliet. Nice to meet you, I say, as I push back on my rolling stool from the bed. I'm guessing we will be working with each other a lot in the future. So long as Chicago is the way it is, I think so, she says, in a light-hearted tone. She steps to the man's side, and without speaking to him or bothering to introduce herself, she places her fingertips on either side of his temples. Immediately, his eyes slide closed. Evelyn closes her eyes as well, and she takes in a deep breath through her nose. There is nothing visible to see. There is no glowing light. There are no shadows going from him to her or her to him. But I have been told about Evelyn. One night, when I attended the night council, Sebastian mentioned that Evelyn had changed someone's memory. She had made them forget that they had been attacked by a vampire. In a place like Chicago, Evelyn is infinitely valuable. I always feel a little guilty doing this, Diana says. She is one of us. Well, one of me. She's a vampire as well, and has been for over 30 years. The poor sucker is never going to know vampires are out there. Something like this might happen again. I'll make sure he stays away from the woman who did this, Evelyn says quietly. He will remember her, but he'll remember the night ending badly, just not with fangs. It was hard enough to believe vampires existed. When Elena told me what she was, trying to wrap my brain around it was difficult. But here I am, watching a woman put her hands on a person, and somehow she is changing his memory. I know another gifted individual whose blood is magic. His mother can track that magical blood. I know another gifted man who can search through the history of your ancestors. Vampires are all the same. We're all immortal. We all drink blood. We're all insanely strong and hardly ever require sleep. But in the end, every one of us is the same. But every gifted being is different, which, in a way, makes them feel even more dangerous. You never know what to expect. I think you need to call Roman, Evelyn says. As I'm digging around in here, this woman looks familiar. She's done this before. Roman has a serious 3-strike rule. This is at least strike 2. I let out a slightly disgusted sigh. Since the night I died my 3rd death, I have miraculously avoided the prick. It's been 4 months, and I haven't had to look at his stupidly handsome face even once. It's been bliss. But begrudgingly, I reach into the pocket of my scrubs and pull out my cell phone. I scroll through my contacts until I see his name.
I'm in the middle of something,
Roman answers.
What do you need?
How about you just shut your mouth, asshole? I snap. We have a little problem down at the hospital. I hear you have a 3-strike rule.
Who is it?
Roman asks, suddenly all business. I don't know. I didn't see the woman, I say, as I look up at Evelyn. She still has her eyes closed, her fingers pressed into his temples. But Evelyn has been digging around in the man's mind. I think she can tell you who she is.
I can be there in an hour. Can it wait that long?
Just then, Evelyn removes her hands from the man. I look to her in question, and she nods her head. That's fine. Roman simply makes a grunting noise of acknowledgement and ends the call. Just then, out in the hall, I hear a blaring alarm, telling me there's something traumatic going on out there. Can you wait here? I ask as I get to my feet. Until Roman gets here, and tell him what he needs to know? Evelyn simply nods. I've dealt with this before. You go save some lives. There was a car accident. 3 teenagers in some ridiculously expensive sports car. They were driving too fast and overcorrected going around a turn. They face-planted right into the street lamp. Broken bones, lacerations, definitely concussions. It's the kind of exciting night that I live for. I get a glimpse of Roman as he arrives in the emergency room, but I'm elbow deep in resetting a tibia. Our eyes meet through the door, but he doesn't say a word. I watch as Evelyn walks up to him, and the two of them turn to go talk in private. By the time my shift is over, I am actually exhausted. It's been one of the most intense nights since I started at the hospital. I feel the tug at the back of my brain, and I am relieved knowing I will actually get to sleep today. Just as I get back to my locker and pull off my bloody scrubs, my phone rings. I look down to see that it is Sebastian. Hey, I'm just getting off my shift, I say, as I hold my phone between my shoulder and my ear and kick off my shoes.
Everything went okay tonight? He asks. You called Roman during our meeting. He stayed for a bit, then he tore out of there looking pretty pissed off.
Ugh, I say in a sigh. Sorry, I forgot that you were all meeting tonight. We had an attack, and Evelyn said she thought it was from a woman who has done this before. Apparently there is a 3-strike rule?
There is, Sebastian says, and it's fine. We were nearly done anyway. You're not too traumatized to still go out tonight, are you?
I hear the smirk in his voice, and it pulls a smile on my own lips. Please, it's going to take a lot more than Roman and a simple little vampire attack to freak me out. Sebastian chuckles on the other end.
Okay then, I will see you at 7.
See you then, I say with a smile, and I end the call. As I head back to my apartment, I wonder if I'm now too keyed up to sleep. I'm full of all kinds of anticipation, nervous, excited. This is probably a bad idea. Sebastian is my boss. You're not supposed to date the boss. But it's just one date, I tell myself. We're just spending time together. There's no harm in that. So I go back to my apartment. I close the blinds, and in the beautifully blissful pitch dark, I actually fall asleep. Chapter 7. I have 1,001 choices, thanks to Elena, but I can't seem to make up my mind on what to wear. What is one supposed to wear when they go on a date with their boss? When they go on a date with a man they once thought they hated? I'm really trying not to think about that word too much. Date. It means something. And my mind keeps going back to Mason. 4 months ago, we broke up. Though, if I'm being honest with myself, were we really ever together? It was something we said over and over. Who said anything about love? Mason and I liked to put our hands all over each other. It certainly wasn't a burden to kiss him, but there was never any conversation about him being my boyfriend or me being his girlfriend, or anything else beyond that. I felt something for Mason. There's no question about that. But now that I have gotten outside the situation for a while, now that I have gained a little bit of perspective, I realized just how shallow I was while I was with him. Just how shallow we were. We were being two reckless teenagers doing whatever the hell we wanted just because it felt good. Mason and I never had a future. We were both well aware of that fact. And now I have to keep reminding myself that I am in that future. I went through a season of growth, and now it's okay to move beyond it. So, at 6:30, I finally settle on a simple black dress. It has a scooping neck and wide tank sleeves. It falls just above my knees. It hugs my form nicely, but doesn't insinuate that this night needs to lead anywhere but to both of our houses by the end of it. I don a pair of black pumps. I curl my hair and dab on just the smallest bit of makeup. I hook some gold earrings into my ears, and just as I am checking my work in the mirror, there is a knock at the door. Pound, pound, pound. My heart hammers in my chest, almost like it did the day Sebastian came and helped me move out of Godfrey Tower. But the smile on my lips as I open the door is completely different. Sebastian is wearing a suit, and there's something about the way it fits that has my pulse racing. There's something about the way his eyes trail from my toes up to my eyes that has me aching just a little bit. This man looks completely at home and totally in his element at the hospital. But he cleans up in one of the most delicious ways.
I must say, Juliet, it's a damn good thing you work as a doctor and dress in scrubs most of the time, because every time you put on a dress...
He trails off. He shakes his head, and once more his eyes trail down the length of my body.
Every man around you is completely at your mercy.
I feel my face flush. And maybe it's something about this dress, but my confidence is high tonight. I could say the same thing about you. Maybe not in a dress, I say as I shrug one shoulder. I smirk. But I have a feeling you know exactly how you look in that suit. I feel something changing. I feel it speeding up. I feel it getting hotter and more dangerous. But I've never been one to run away from any of those things. Stupid Juliet. She's reckless. She's always running straight toward the things that might put her in peril. Where it once bothered me and made me think that he was a ladies' man, I now appreciate the smirk on Sebastian's lips. And it sends a rush up my entire body that look is aimed at me.
Shall we?
Sebastian asks as he extends his elbow. With a smile, I loop my arm through his and pull the door to my apartment closed behind me. We walk down the hall to the elevator. Sebastian has a sleek black car waiting at the curb when we step outside. The thing looks like it could travel to space if it wanted to. It also looks like it had to cost more than I can dream of making in 10 years. Now, this is a little more what I had in mind. I say, alluding to the big silver truck he drove when he helped me move.
Just don't tell any of the other staff at the hospital that I drive something so frivolous,
He says, as he pulls the passenger door open for me.
but there has to be a few perks to being the Blood King of Chicago.
It shouldn't, but that title sends a wave of goosebumps up my arms. Sebastian climbs into the driver's seat and pulls away from the curb. In a show-off, reckless move, he guns the gas, and we launch down the road. Just 10 minutes later, we park in a parking garage, and once again, Sebastian opens my door and extends a hand to help me from his car that sits so low to the ground, I keep expecting to feel cement under my behind at any moment. Taking his warm, steady hand, he helps me to my feet, and then he places a hand at the small of my back, encouraging me toward the door ahead. A few minutes later, we're seated at a table in the middle of one of the most spectacular-looking rooms I've ever seen. The ceiling is arched, and there are all kinds of sculptures and paintings woven into the crown molding. The carpets are ridiculously plush, and the furniture looks stupidly expensive. There's a bar at one end of the room, crafted from very old wood.
I have to say,
Sebastian says, as we settle into our seats and the waiter walks away after handing us our menus.
this place isn't exactly my usual style.
I arch an eyebrow because I was a little surprised when we walked in.
But I thought that you would appreciate the history,
Sebastian says, as he leans back into his seat and looks around.
This was one of Al Capone's favorite places to party. He plotted takeovers and murders in this room. He brought his mistress here. It was the era of Prohibition, but Al Capone bowed to no law enforcement.
Here? I ask in awe as I look around at the room with new eyes. Sebastian nods with a grin.
Did you know that during Prohibition, there were over 1,000 speakeasies in downtown Chicago alone? The area is only a few square miles big. Chicago has always been a place for the rebels.
I shake my head and smile. People never know what to think about me. They expect me to be perky and happy, some cute little California girl with these blue eyes and blonde hair. No one would get that this is exactly the kind of restaurant I would like to go to. A restaurant where gangsters once met. I don't know how you do it, I say, as I reach automatically for my glass of water. Only I don't lift it because it doesn't sound good. It would be so much better if it was filled with some O negative. People don't get me. They're usually turned off by my sarcasm or my bitterness. But you... I shake my head. Sebastian folds his arms over the table and leans forward.
I feel like I've known you for a long time, Juliet. I don't talk to anyone. I certainly don't tell anyone about my history. But it's easy to talk to you.
I nod in agreement, but I don't get the chance to say anything else because the waiter walks up and sets down 2 wine glasses. With one shallow breath in, I know it's blood, and a smile pulls on my lips when I watch Sebastian slip the waiter a $100 bill. He takes it discreetly and asks to take our orders. I didn't really look through the options, so I end up ordering the first thing my eyes land on. Hopefully, it's good. So, I couldn't help but notice, I say, as I lean back in my chair and cross my legs. Where did you get the scar across your chest? His hand raises to his pectoral and raises his eyebrows.
This one?
I nod.
It was one of my fights. After I lost my family, I left Virginia. I ended up in New York. I was homeless, starving, and I got wind of these underground fights. I knew no one could beat me, so it was a pretty safe bet.
Cheater, I tease. He chuckles.
I never claimed to fight fair,
he says. He runs his hand down his chest, and it's way too easy to recall how that area looks without a shirt covering it.
I made sure to throw a few fights, just so they wouldn't get too suspicious of me.
Scars give us character, I say with a shrug. Sebastian nods.
How'd you get the burn?
I sit forward, folding my arms on the tabletop. Car accident, I answer. I was in the car with one of my foster placements. I'm not really sure what happened, but he got in a wreck and the car started on fire. He bailed, left me to save myself. I ended up in the hospital for a few days. I didn't go back to his house after that. Sebastian swears under his breath and shakes his head. So tell me, I say, as the waiter delivers an appetizer. You decided to go to medical school after dominating the fighting scene in Brooklyn. What was the trigger to make the change? He shrugs and looks around the opulent room.
Lots of things. Losing my family the way I did. I always wished there had been more I could have done to save them. And then there was the polio epidemic. I watched a lot of suffering happen. And then I realized I was tired of being seen as a brute. By making a living using my fists. And knowing how much money doctors made didn't hinder my decision either.
I smirk at that.
Why did you decide to become a doctor?
He asks. A sigh slips past my lips, and I think back to my life in Kansas. I was always seen as the poor girl, the white trash girl, the girl who always screwed up and ended up in a fight and then in detention. And I can honestly say that I didn't care what people thought of me, but I shake my head. I still wanted to prove the world wrong about me. I wanted to show the world that I wouldn't just end up homeless or in jail. I was kind of always morbidly fascinated when people got hurt, and the money didn't hinder my decision too much either. Sebastian chuckles, and I smile. It's so nice, feeling like I can be honest, say the honest thoughts in my head, even if they don't always make me seem like a saint. Sebastian isn't judging me because he's gone about life the same way I have in so many aspects. So, it's the perfect dinner date. I haven't felt this comfortable around a person in a long time. I haven't felt like I could be this myself in maybe ever. And when we're finished with dinner and Sebastian drives us half a mile away to the theater, I feel at ease. Even though I'm not the type of girl who has ever been taken out for a fancy date like this, I still feel worthy as we walk to the doors and then take our seats in the beautiful theater. For once, maybe for the first time since I arrived in Chicago, I don't feel like an imposter. So, in the dark, with the play going on stage, my heart breaks out into thunderous anticipation when Sebastian's hand finds mine, and slowly his fingers slip through mine. It feels right when my fingers curl around his, and he leans toward me slightly, resting our combined hands on my thigh. The play is delightful. Maybe it's just the company, because normally I probably would get bored at the perky storyline. But I feel so settled in this moment. I feel like I'm where I was supposed to end up being. It's not the road I would have anticipated, but it kind of feels like we've taken two mirrored paths to this point.
Did you enjoy the show?
Sebastian asks, as we ride the elevator in my building when it's over. I look up at him and nod. I did, which I didn't expect. Thank you for taking me.
You need to stop thanking me for everything, Juliet,
he says softly, his gaze intense as he looks down at me.
You're simply gaining the things you've always deserved.
My heart flutters at that. The things I've always deserved. I don't think anyone has ever thought I deserved anything. Not really. I simply smile as the elevator opens and we step out of it. We walk down to my door and then linger outside of it.
I know the situation is a bit complicated with us working together,
Sebastian says, his tone a little husky, a little weighted. And everything in me takes note that he says working together, not me working for him.
But I'm glad you came out with me tonight, Juliet.
His eyes rise to meet mine.
And I hope we can do it again.
He steps forward, and his scent floods my senses. He raises a hand, softly brushing a stray lock of hair behind my ear.
I've waited a long time to find someone like you,
he says, in nearly a whisper. The breath catches in my throat. I can barely think straight. Every moment we've spent together spins through my head, and I kind of feel like I've been stumbling around in the dark my entire life. But I've finally looked up and seen that I'm not alone. I've waited a long time to find someone who gets me. Sebastian rests a hand against my cheek, and everything in me is pushing forward. Every bone in my body says it's finally okay when I mirror Sebastian's movements and lean forward. Our lips meet in the softest touch. Light, warm, easy. His lips feel like temptation and fate. I take one breath in, feeling his other hand at the small of my back, hugging me to him just slightly. There's nothing demanding about this kiss, There is nothing dominant or coercive. This is the hesitant intake of breath between two broken, distorted souls who have been lost in the depths of the ocean for a long time. And suddenly, the world stills here in this moment when we each suddenly find an anchor. The kiss doesn't deepen. It stays exactly where it is, seeping down into the very depths of my core.
"Good night, Juliet,"
Sebastian whispers as he breaks the kiss, looking into my eyes. His brows are furrowed, and I wonder if he feels like his entire universe shifted just a little bit. Good night, Sebastian. I breathe. He takes one step away, holding onto my hand for a prolonged moment, until he's too far away to hold it. And then, with the smallest, most hopeful smile, he turns, and I watch him disappear toward the elevator. So, with my own fluttering smile, I push my door open, and I walk inside.